So no matter what Final Fantasy game is your favorite, there's something for you in this Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set, and you are about to watch one of the pre-con reviews here on the MTG Thoughtcast. Now, this is one of 4 for the series. If you want to watch all 4 of our pre-con reviews unedited, you can click the link somewhere over on the screen here that my brother John has provided. And if not, if you just want to watch the one that you clicked on, we'll see you there in 2 seconds. I'll go ahead and take us away with the first of our 4 decks here. This is a Mardu deck that is based around Final Fantasy VI, which is kind of the last of the classic games before it started going into... I think that 7 was the first one on the PlayStation.
That's correct.
So this was an SNES game that apparently is dope. People love 6. So I think they went through and picked some of the more popular of the games. And this one, just based on the characters and design, seems awesome. This is the Revival Trance PreCon. It is helmed by Terra, Herald of Hope, which is red, white, and a black for a legendary human wizard warrior. You get half your party right there. It's a 3/3. As a named ability of Trance, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you mill 2 cards and Terra gains flying until the end of turn. Second ability is whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 generic mana. When you do, you return a creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is awesome. This is Alesha who smiles at death.
That one.
Just completely cracked open. It's so awesome. I played Alesha for a long time. It's such a fun deck. I would say going into this, don't think of this as a reanimator deck. This is a graveyard recursion value deck. So importantly, she gets power 3 or less from the graveyard. So there's going to be a lot of little value-y things in here that you're going to be wanting to get rid of, things that are in your graveyard that you can just kind of reanimate cheaply. This is awesome. I'm so excited to dive into this. Again, I know nothing about the game. I know nothing about these characters, but this deck is so sweet. We have our alt commander for the deck, which is Celis Rune Knight.
Sure.
This one's so cool, John. So it's 1 red, white, and a black for a legendary human wizard knight. So when Celis, it's a 4/4. When Celis enters, you discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. I love wheels. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from the graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So as you're reanimating creatures, you just turbocharge your board with this, and it just comes on a wheel on a stick. Like, Celis is awesome.
Yeah, it's Cathar's Crusade from the graveyard.
Yeah, literally. It's so sick. So I will say that for the way the deck is currently built, I do think you should keep Terra in the command zone. It also, I think they did this for flavor purposes, that they've kept the main character in the command zone for all of these, and I would have trouble telling you to do anything differently. So definitely keep Terra in. Terra's also very powerful. That 3 mana, 3/3 gains flying every turn as it attacks, at the beginning of combat. It's just an evasive threat that's going to continue to fill your graveyard and then pay itself off. So I think that Terra is a better engine because it feeds into itself rather than Celis, which is a very strong card in the deck and is a really good build around for its own commander deck. As we go through this, we're just going to talk about a few of the new cards that we're excited about. So let me start off some of the new cards talking about Kefka Dancing Mad. Speaking of mad. So Kefka is 5 black and red for a 6/6 human wizard. Those who've played the game know Kefka. During your turn, Kefka has Indestructible. That's just a line of text on that. Oops, Indestructible. At the beginning of your end step, exile a card at random from each opponent's graveyard. You may cast any number of spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Then each player who owns a spell you cast this way loses life equal to its mana value. You just get free spells and it domes your opponents for it.
Thank you very much. This is mine now. Please be punished for it.
This might be one of the strongest reanimator targets that they've printed in Rakdos in a second, especially because it just gains indestructible. Like, so obviously you still have your Swords to Plowshares and your Path to Exiles to worry about as Kefka comes into play. But if you reanimate this really early, especially when there's only a few cards in the graveyard, you're just going to start snagging spells. And like, it's impervious to murders on your turn. Like, there's really...
you gotta get him off turn. Yeah.
You gotta get him off turn, which I think is one of the mechanics from the game, I would assume. That you can't do anything to him while he's doing anything.
I believe it's more. This came from the video that we were talking about earlier. It's more for the fact that Kefka as a villain, he's the main antagonist of 6,
exactly.
And 6 did this unique thing that it sets you up the whole first half of the game to go face him, and then you do face him, and then you think you've won, and then the whole party loses. Yeah. And then the back half of the game is re-rallying your troops again to go fight him again in his big ultimate like form after he's already blown up the earth.
Yeah. So this is, his first form is indestructible, can't lose kind of thing.
Yeah,
really, really sick. Like I said, there's not a ton of real like reanimation support in this deck. There is, we'll talk about it in a second. There is an actual reanimate in this deck, which I would certainly pay 7 life to have Kefka come into play really, really early. So there's a little bit of reanimation package in here. Mostly you're looking to be reanimating things with power 3 or less with Terra. But hey, you just slam down a Kefka for 7 mana. Who cares? You're going to start getting stuff going on. Last new card I want to talk about, the Warring Triad. This is a weird one, dude. This is freaking weird. So it's 3 mana, generic mana, for a 5/5 legendary artifact creature god with flying, trample, and haste. Okay?
All right. I'm in.
As long as there are fewer than 8 cards in your graveyard, it's not a creature. And it has an ability to tap, mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color.
Milliken plus.
It's Milliken plus, then it's a 5/5 with flying, trample, and haste. This is so good. Like, I don't...
It sounds.
This is what I want out of a 3 mana rock, is a finisher.
It sounds stupid. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Cultivator's Caravan from
100%.
Yeah, from the original Kaladesh block. It was a very similar thing. It was the 3 mana Manalith style mana rock that could be a 5/5 sometimes.
Yes. It's sick to see the god type on a colorless card, especially on an artifact.
Again. Assassin's Creed.
Was that a god or was that an avatar?
I think it was both. That big colorless one.
Yeah,
it was 11 something mana. I think it was
whatever.
I don't know. That one.
You'll put it up here and one of us will be right. Sweet. So that's like the new cards I want to talk about. So the deck, like I said, the way it functions is it's going to be this like kind of grindy value deck where you're going to be playing these cards that you don't care whether they die or they have some way to get themselves to the graveyard, or you're just milling them with Terra as you go. This kind of plays as a weird, like almost Kalia of the Vasti sort of vibe. Like you're trying to get stuff in and reanimate it cheap. There is some pretty sweet reprints in this deck, John. We'll start with the boring ones, which are the lands, which is awesome. So I've included, there's 7 cards that are above $5 that have been reprinted in this deck. 2 of them are lands, which is sweet. It's the most boring of cards to receive, but I'm very grateful for it. So one of them is
always handy to have,
Yeah, one of them is Graven Cairns, which is the filter land that taps for a colorless on its own. I believe these were from Lorwyn?
Originally, yeah.
Lands? Yeah.
Cairns specifically was from Future Sight, and then was Lorwyn.
Thank you, Oracle.
Yeah.
So that's the Graven Cairns, and then there's a High Market in the deck as well. Everyone say High Market.
High Market.
Couple other really good value reprints in the deck. We have an Archfiend of Depravity, which is a card that I have not seen very often, but woofy, what a card. It's a doozy. It's a 5 mana 5/4 with flying. With at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures they control and sacrifices the rest. So this is a real control-y piece. Like I said,
and this is all, by the way, as well. Like you're seeing them here on video, but for our audio listeners as well, by the way, any reprints we are talking about, all of them are art and flavor adjusted to the world of Final Fantasy. So that's worthwhile bringing up about, because it's like, if you like these kind of cards and you are also big into Final Fantasy, here you go. Here's 4 different decks, one right now we're talking about, that are in a variety of both new cards and reprints, all of them now themed around your favorite games.
Yeah. Aforementioned, there's a Reanimate in the deck, which anytime that they want to throw me a Reanimate, I'm really happy with it.
They've been putting Reanimate a lot in PreCons recently.
Yeah, it was really underprinted for a long time, and then recently has been printed quite often. We have Reanimate Plus in the deck, which is Rise of the Dark Realms. This is the other end of the spectrum. Such a cool reprint in this deck. So it's 9 mana to put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. There was a long time where this was like a $25 card, so I'm grateful to see this one come down and continue to be reprinted.
Yep.
There's a Ruinous Ultimatum in this deck. Just Mardu's "Oops, I win the game" button. And then the last one, which is understandably an expensive reprint. This will not stay expensive for long because it's an uncommon, but Stitch Together is in this deck, which I'd never seen before. It's a black for a sorcery. It says return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. And then Threshold, so if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, return that card from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. So early game, it's just going to recur something to your hand. Late game, it's going to recur something to the battlefield for you at the very, very low cost of black. Especially with such a good mana base in this deck. Like, I'm really happy with what they're doing here.
You should have access to your colors like most of the time.
Most certainly. Like, obviously you have your command towers, you have your exotic orchards, but like they've thrown in like Dragon Skull Summit, Clifftop Retreat. They've got the checklands in here. These feel a lot like the Lord of the Rings commander decks, to be honest. Which kind of makes sense. They were roughly about the same amount of new cards per deck, and about the same retail price as well. I think the Lord of the Rings decks might have been $80 if I remember correctly. If not, they were about 70 as well.
Yeah, somewhere in this same price range. Yeah, I think we're maybe looking closer towards perhaps the Fallout ones as well, with like a very similar vibe as well.
For sure. Except those had like 50 new cards per deck.
That is true, yeah.
40 cards, I believe.
So the new cards have been toned down in these decks significantly.
Yeah, so there's only 10 basic lands out of 37 lands in the deck. So there's a ton of non-basics, and they're all pretty good ones. Like, we have that whole cycle of the Lorwyn filter lands. All that to say, your mana is going to be pretty good in this deck. I did some play testing with it, and it's not difficult to access the correct colors of mana. It's a relatively synergistic deck. It sort of feels like it's playing in between both this grindy value package and then a full reanimator package. But then there's things like Sun Titan in the deck, where it kind of fits both ends, where you can, reanimate your Sun Titan and then it starts bringing stuff back.
It gets little guys back, yep.
100%. I think the best card in the deck is going to be Priest of the Fell Rites. This, to me, feels like exactly what this deck is trying to do, which is play this 2-mana thing that's under 3 power that sacrifices itself to reanimate something bigger. So as you're milling stuff, you can, reanimate the Priest of the Fell Rites with Terra, and then use the Priest of the Fell Rites to reanimate Kefka. And then next turn, when you swing with Terra, reanimate Priest of the Fell Rites again for 2 mana, crack it again, sacrifice something bigger. So you're kind of gonna build up this chain of command of reanimation. I had so much fun playtesting this deck. I really think that anybody who picks this up is going to be having an absolute blast with it. Just filling their graveyard and finding some combo of reanimating something little that does something bigger to find yourself in a winning position with it. It's really sticky, I would call it. This is a deck that I would refer to as sticky, because you're not going to be able to remove enough stuff. What?
Kefka's sticky.
Kefka's sticky. Yeah, well, it's like, this is why I love playing reanimator decks, is you just blank people's removal, unless they exile it, of course. So things that I would do differently, John, there is one piece of protection in this deck. For a deck that's completely centered around playing your commander and swinging with it, there is exclusively a Swift Foot Boots in this deck.
Ooh, boy.
Not even Lightning Greaves. So I would say upgrade that to a Lightning Greaves, put one in there if you want to, but that's not an exciting enough card to talk about. Putting in the deck. I do think that
take the Lightning Greaves out of Cloud's deck and put it in here.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want Shroud in that. The first thing I'm going to put in this deck is a Selfless Savior. This is the 1-mana dog that sacrifices itself to give another creature indestructible until end of turn. This I debated between this being Selfless Savior and Selfless Spirit, which sacrifices to give your entire board indestructible.
Yes.
But I've found, again, we don't care if stuff goes to the graveyard outside of Terra. So that 1 mana cheaper actually fits better into the curve to me than Selfless Spirit does. So I'm recommending a Selfless Savior for this deck. That sort of helps sort out some of the protection pieces. And then one of my other favorite forms of protection is just finding a redundant piece for your commander. And I found that in Alesha Who Laughs at Fate. This is the 3 mana. It's a Rakdos Alesha. It's a 2/2 first strike. When she attacks, when they attack, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. But it has this really important ability that reads a lot like Terra, which is raid at the beginning of your end step. If you attacked this turn, return target creature with mana value less than or equal to Alesha's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you don't have to attack with Alesha ever for it to continue to trigger. You do it once, and all of a sudden you have Terra's trigger on your end step, just for attacking with Terra. Outside of that, you're just going to get 2 power things back. Oh no, 2 mana things. This one is mana value less than or equal to Alesha's power. So on rate, without ever attacking with them or boosting power whatsoever, you're going to continue to get things with mana value 2 or less back on your end step just by continuing to do what your commander wants to do anyway. So I'd like to consider that as a form of protection, because now you just have another thing that's doing the same thing that needs to be killed. So that's Alesha. We've talked about Selfless Savior. What is something cool that we could continue to reanimate, John? That is maybe under 3 power that does a very similar thing to what Priest of the Fellright does. Karmic Guide. There's not a Karmic Guide in this deck.
Oh, really?
How is there not? It's so perfect. Let me tell you about why Karmic Guide is so perfect in this deck. One,
because it's 2 power.
It's 2 power. It sacrifices itself on the upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
With the Echo, you just never pay the Echo, and then it's back in your graveyard, and then you just get it back with Terra every single turn. It's going to sacrifice itself.
Yep.
You swing with Terra, you reanimate it, you get something else back. Next turn, it puts itself right back into the graveyard where it wants to be.
Dope.
So Karmic Guide might be the best card in the deck, as it normally is when you're playing a Karmic Guide. But that is just such a sweet piece of glue that you're going to get to add into that deck. A little bit of extra removal that I would throw in here. One, a Cursed Marauder. If you've ever played with Luris or with Alesha or any of the Aleshas, and you've gotten to play a Cursed Marauder sacrificing itself to then put itself in the graveyard and then continuing to reanimate the Accursed Marauder to just edict the board over and over and over and over again, it turns into a win. So having something like Accursed Marauder, again, we want little things that will put themselves into the graveyard to continue to get back with Terra, and Accursed Marauder is one of the best at doing that. That's 4 cards I want to add. Last one, I wanted to hit my 5 cards for the deck. I think that Brass's Tunnel Grinder might be sick in here. This is sort of my, hear me out card. So Brass's
Tunnel Grinder. Okay.
Brass's Tunnel Grinder. It's a 3-mana legendary artifact from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. When it enters the battlefield, you discard any number of cards and then draw them any cards +1. Hey, it's Celeste. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, you flip it over. You transform it into Tekutlan, the Searing Rift. It's a legendary cave. It taps for red, and then when you cast a permanent spell using mana from it, you discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. So it's like ramp. It's a wheel for yourself. It sort of ramps at some point. You're always going to be descending because, for those who don't remember, descend is just a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere, including being milled from Terra on her ability. So Terra, beginning of combat, is going to descend every turn anyway. So it's just going to take 3 turns for this to flip over into a land that then is just going to get you crazy value. Like you just start Discover X every turn, where X is your biggest spell that you're casting. That is some value right there.
Nice. That's very cool. That's a cool one. I wasn't familiar with that one.
Yeah, that was my like. I always try to throw in like a hear me out include, and Brass's Tunnel Grinder is that. Man, I cannot talk highly enough about this deck. I think on face value, when you compare it to the other decks, it's maybe slightly weaker than what the other ones are trying to do. But it just feels like this beautiful dance where as soon as you start going, it's just this engine that kind of churns up to speed. I had so much fun playtesting it. Yeah, overall, I would say this is like a 7 or an 8 out of 10 on my love for this precon scale. I love Mardu, I love reanimating, I love value engines. This just really speaks to me. So this might get me to play Final Fantasy VI, TBH. But that's all I've got for this commander deck. Really stoked on it.